Ladies and gentlemen, in a world where noise and chatter dominate every aspect of our lives, we often overlook the power of silence. Silence can be more than just the absence of sound. It can be a tool, a weapon, and a strategy in itself. Today, I want to speak about the profound strength in silence, how we can confuse others, disarm them, and ultimately gain control by embracing the stillness within us. There is a magic in not always responding, in holding back words that are expected of you. It disrupts expectations and leaves people uncertain about your next move. When you choose silence over words, it opens up a space where your true thoughts can grow, unspoken but ever present. Sometimes silence is louder than any conversation could ever be. When we are silent, we also give ourselves the gift of clarity. It is in those moments of quiet reflection that we find our true thoughts, unhindered by the noise of external opinions. Silence allows us to understand situations from a fresh perspective, making us more capable of responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. Silence as power, silence is often misunderstood as a form of weakness or avoidance, when in fact it can be one of the most powerful tools we possess. In a world that demands constant communication, reaction, and engagement, choosing silence over speech can send a potent message. When you remain silent in moments where others expect a response, you are not surrendering or submitting, you are asserting control. In these moments, silence forces the other person or group to grapple with the unknown. They begin to wonder why you are not reacting, and in their uncertainty, you hold the upper hand. The power of silence comes from its ability to disrupt the flow of expected interactions. People, especially in tense or high-stakes situations, often rely on a predictable exchange of words to determine the next course of action. By staying silent, you break that pattern. You leave them unable to predict what you will do next, and this unpredictability becomes a form of strength. Moreover, silence can be a method of self-regulation. When you choose to remain silent, you give yourself the opportunity to pause, to think, and to assess the situation more carefully. Rather than succumbing to the pressure to immediately react or defend yourself, you maintain your composure. This calculated pause allows you to act from a place of intention rather than being driven by impulse. Your silence becomes a protective shield, keeping you from saying things you might later regret or getting caught up in emotional responses that could escalate a situation unnecessarily. In professional settings, silence can be a tool of influence. When others are speaking at length, trying to persuade or argue, your silence can silently assert authority. By choosing not to speak, you communicate that you are not easily swayed. You can let the words of others fill the air, giving you the space to observe and analyze their true intentions without needing to immediately contribute. In some cases, the lack of response can cause others to reevaluate their own position, sometimes even softening their stance in the face of your quiet strength. Silence also offers the advantage of time. In the fast-paced world we live in, many feel pressured to respond immediately to any statement, question, or conflict. However, when you embrace silence, you step outside this rush. You no longer feel obligated to fill every silence with words or explanations. In doing so, you create the luxury of reflection. This distance between stimulus and response gives you a moment to decide what the best course of action is, ensuring that when you do speak, your words are chosen carefully, with purpose and power. By embracing silence, you become less predictable, more in control, and far more powerful. Silence is not a passive state. It is an active choice, a deliberate action that speaks volumes without uttering a single word. In fact, silence, when used strategically, can be one of the most profound ways to assert power in a conversation, interaction, or even a conflict. Confusion as a tool, one of the most effective ways to gain an advantage in any interaction, is by creating a sense of confusion in the other party. Confusion disrupts the expectations of those around you, leaving them uncertain about your intentions and motivations. By choosing silence at critical moments, you force others to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions and speculations. This uncertainty can be an incredibly powerful tool, as it leaves the other person on edge, unsure of how to proceed. When we speak, we often reveal our thoughts, emotions, and strategies. We become predictable, and the other party can use our words to understand us, potentially manipulate us, or plan their next move. Silence, on the other hand, allows you to control the narrative. When you withhold information or response, it disorients others. They can no longer rely on your words to figure out where you stand or how you might react. Instead, they are forced to interpret your silence, and in doing so, they create their own narratives that may be far from the truth. In conflict or negotiation, confusion can lead to hesitation. When the other party is unsure of where you stand or what you want, they may second-guess their own actions. In this space of uncertainty, their ability to make quick decisions diminishes, and they may begin to overthink or delay their responses. This hesitation can give you the upper hand, allowing you to observe their reactions more carefully before deciding on your next move. Essentially, you are controlling the pace of the interaction, keeping others off, balance and unsure. Moreover, confusion can create vulnerability in others. When people don't know how to interpret your silence, they may try to compensate by making assumptions about you or the situation. These assumptions may be incorrect, leading them to act in ways that are less favorable or more extreme. In some cases, this miscalculation can open doors for you to take action that they did not anticipate. Their confusion creates a window of opportunity, one that you can exploit without them ever realizing it. Another key aspect of using confusion as a tool is that it prevents others from forcing you into a corner. When you remain silent, you avoid being pushed into making decisions or giving explanations that you are not ready for. Silence becomes a defense mechanism, a way to avoid being trapped by questions or demands that could limit your options. As long as you remain silent, others cannot corner you with their expectations. They cannot force you to reveal more than you are willing to share. Silence also forces others to look inward. In the absence of a response, they begin to question their own actions and words. This can be disorienting for those who are accustomed to having clear signals from others. They might wonder, what does their silence mean? Are they angry, disinterested, detached? This internal questioning can lead to self-doubt, which makes it harder for the other party to focus on the situation at hand. Instead of focusing on you, they become preoccupied with their own confusion, giving you an opportunity to observe them more closely without them realizing it. The beauty of using confusion through silence is that it creates a dynamic shift in power. As the other person or group tries to decipher your silence, you subtly influence the direction of the interaction. What was once a straightforward conversation or confrontation becomes layered with complexity, and in this complexity, you gain an advantage. The more confused they are, the less likely they are to see through your strategy, and the more likely they are to make missteps that you can capitalize on. Clarity and stillness in the hustle and bustle of daily life, we are often encouraged to act quickly, to react immediately, and to be constantly on our toes. In a world that values speed and constant motion, the idea of taking a step back to reflect in stillness might seem counterproductive. However, it is in these moments of pause when we embrace silence that we often gain the clearest understanding of ourselves, the situation, and the best course of action. When we are silent, we create space for deep introspection. Rather than rushing to respond or engage, silence allows us to collect our thoughts, to weigh our options, and to consider the ramifications of our words or actions. This clarity comes from the distance that silence provides. By stepping away from the noise and distractions around us, we find the mental stillness that allows our true thoughts and insights to emerge. Without the constant pressure to keep up with the flow of conversation or reaction, we can observe more attentively and process what we truly feel or believe. In a conversation, particularly one that is heated or emotional, Silence can be a form of mental clarity. When emotions run high, it's easy to be swept up in the moment, to say things we don't mean or act impulsively. By choosing silence in these moments, we give ourselves the space to reflect on what is truly important, what the situation requires from us. Instead of allowing our emotions to drive our responses, silence provides a buffer, allowing reason and logic to guide our decisions. The stillness of our thoughts becomes a safe harbor from the storm of emotions, where we can pause and ask ourselves, what do I really want to achieve here? What is the best response for this moment? Additionally, silence grants us the ability to listen more deeply. Often when we speak, we are not fully paying attention to the words or feelings of others. Our minds are busy formulating our next response, thinking of how to make our point, or wondering how the conversation will unfold. In contrast, when we remain silent, we are forced to focus solely on the other person. We absorb the full scope of their words, tone, and body language without the distraction of planning our reply. In these moments, we gain a greater understanding of the situation and the people involved. This deeper understanding allows us to make more informed and thoughtful decisions. Silence also provides clarity by removing the clutter of external opinions and influences. We live in a world where everyone has something to say, whether it's advice, criticism, or expectations. In the midst of all this external noise, it can be difficult to hear our own voice. Silence offers us the rare opportunity to block out these distractions, to reconnect with our own thoughts and instincts. When we silence the world around us, we can more clearly hear what our inner voice is telling us. It becomes easier to discern what aligns with our values and goals, and what is simply noise that needs to be ignored. Moreover, clarity and stillness extends beyond just personal reflection. It also enhances our ability to assess the environment and the people around us. In a group dynamic or a high-pressure situation, silence allows us to step back and observe the unfolding interactions. Rather than being caught up in the fray, we gain a more objective perspective. We notice subtle cues, body language, facial expressions, underlying tensions that might otherwise be overlooked in a more reactive setting. This heightened awareness gives us an advantage, allowing us to make decisions with greater insight and confidence. In professional settings, silence can lead to breakthroughs in understanding. It is easy to get caught up in the urgency of meetings, deadlines, and projects, where speaking up or offering immediate solutions feels like the right course of action. But when we pause, reflect, and allow ourselves the clarity that silence offers, we can see the situation more holistically. We are no longer reacting to pressures or deadlines. Instead, we are responding with a clear mind, guided by well-considered insights and perspectives. This clarity can be the key to solving complex problems, managing conflicts, or navigating difficult negotiations. Ultimately, silence becomes a powerful tool for clarity because it allows us to detach from the noise and the rush of daily life. It provides a mental and emotional space where we can process our thoughts, understand the situation at hand, and make decisions from a place of calm and insight. In this stillness, we find a deep and unshakable clarity that cannot be easily clouded by the chaos around us. Silence promotes self-reflection. One of the greatest benefits of silence is its ability to foster self-reflection. In our fast-paced, noise-filled world, it can be all too easy to lose touch with our own thoughts, to become so consumed by external distractions that we forget to check in with ourselves. But when we choose silence, we create a moment to step away from the noise and the expectations of others, giving ourselves the space to reflect on our thoughts, feelings, and actions. This is where true self-awareness begins to flourish. In the absence of external noise and conversation, we are left alone with our own mind. Silence removes the external pressures that often guide our decisions, such as the need to please others or to conform to social expectations. This unspoken stillness provides us with an opportunity to look inward, to examine our true beliefs, motivations, and desires without interference. In a sense, silence acts as a mirror, reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves that we may have overlooked or ignored. In this quiet space, we can begin to understand not only what we think, but why we think the way we do. Self-reflection through silence allows us to evaluate our actions and behavior more critically. When we are caught up in the busyness of life, it's easy to act without truly considering the consequences of our actions. We might respond to situations out of habit, instinct, or because we are expected to. However, in moments of silence, we are given the time to step back and ask ourselves, why did I react that way? Was it the best choice? How do I feel about the way I handled that situation? This pause provides an opportunity for honest self-examination, where we can confront any areas of ourselves that we may wish to improve. Through silence, we can also gain clarity on our values and priorities. In the rush of daily life, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters to us. We may become preoccupied with the demands of others or the pressures of society, pushing our own needs and desires to the side. But in the quiet moments that silence provides, we can reconnect with our core values, reminding ourselves of what is truly important. This reconnection helps us make more intentional decisions, ones that align with our true desires rather than the fleeting opinions of those around us. Silence encourages us to examine not only our thoughts but our emotions as well. Often, when we are in conversation or engaged with others, we may suppress our true feelings in favor of keeping the peace or avoiding conflict. In silence, however, we have the opportunity to sit with our emotions, allowing them to surface and be fully acknowledged. This emotional honesty is essential for personal growth because it enables us to understand why we feel a certain way and what those feelings mean for our actions. Whether it's anger, sadness, joy, or fear, silence creates a safe space for us to explore these emotions and gain insight into our emotional landscape. By embracing silence, we are also better able to assess our relationships and interactions with others. When we take a step back from constant communication and external influences, we can reflect on how we engage with the people around us. Are we being true to ourselves in these relationships, or are we conforming to what others expect of us? Are we setting healthy boundaries, or are we allowing ourselves to be manipulated or taken for granted? In the quiet of our own thoughts, we can evaluate whether we are nurturing relationships that align with our values, and whether we are giving enough of ourselves to the people who truly matter. Furthermore, silence helps us cultivate mindfulness, a practice that allows us to become more present in the moment. Often, our minds are preoccupied with worries about the past or future, clouding our ability to be fully engaged in the here and now. Silence, however, offers us a way to bring our attention back to the present moment, to notice the thoughts and feelings that arise without judgment. Through this mindfulness, we develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and our surroundings, enhancing our overall sense of peace and well-being. The act of self-reflection through silence is not only about looking inward, but also about understanding our place in the larger context of the world. By taking time to reflect in silence, we can assess how we are contributing to our communities, our families, and the world at large. Are we acting with integrity? Are we fulfilling our responsibilities? Are we making a positive impact, or are we caught up in distractions that prevent us from making a difference? These are important questions that silence gives us the opportunity to ask and answer honestly. Ultimately, silence provides the space for self-reflection to take place on a deeper, more meaningful level. In the absence of external distractions, we are able to connect with our inner selves, to explore our motivations, values, and emotions. It is in these moments of quiet introspection that we can gain the clarity and insight needed to live more consciously, make better decisions, and lead more authentic lives. Silence speaks volumes while words often carry meaning and intention. Silence is equally powerful in its ability to communicate. We tend to overlook the profound messages that silence can convey, assuming that we need to constantly speak in order to express ourselves or make an impact. However, silence, when used intentionally, speaks volumes often far louder than words ever could. It is a form of communication that transcends language and can evoke a wide range of emotions, reactions, and responses without uttering a single sound. One of the most striking aspects of silence is its ability to communicate emotions that words often fail to capture. In moments of intense emotion, whether it's sadness, anger, or frustration, silence can express what we cannot articulate. For example, when someone is grieving, sometimes the most comforting thing you can offer is your presence and your silence, rather than trying to find the right words to ease their pain. Silence allows the person to process their emotions without the pressure of having to explain them. In these moments, silence is not empty. It is filled with understanding, empathy, and solidarity. It communicates a message that words often fall short of delivering, that you are there, that you understand, and that you don't need to speak to show your support. Similarly, silence can serve as a powerful expression of disapproval or disagreement. In many cases, remaining silent in the face of an injustice, a lie, or a harmful situation can speak more loudly than any verbal objection. When we choose not to engage in a conversation or to voice our opinion, we send a clear message that we do not condone or agree with what is happening. This act of silence can be particularly effective in challenging situations where speaking out might escalate conflict or cause further harm. By withholding our words, we communicate that we are not willing to participate in or endorse what is being said or done. Silence in this context becomes a tool of protest and resistance, subtly undermining the status quo without the need for confrontation. In interpersonal relationships, silence can serve as a means of setting boundaries. Often, people communicate through their words, but sometimes it is our silence that speaks the loudest. When someone oversteps our personal space or treats us disrespectfully, silence can act as a powerful way to signal that their behavior is not acceptable. Rather than engaging in a heated argument or explaining why their actions are wrong, choosing to remain silent can force the other person to reflect on their behavior. This type of silence creates a space where they are left to question what went wrong and what their silence might mean. In this way, silence serves as a form of self-respect, maintaining personal boundaries without the need for confrontation. Silence can also communicate confidence and control. In situations where others might feel the urge to fill the air with words, whether through small talk, nervous chatter, or over-explaining your decision to remain silent, can be a subtle but powerful assertion of authority. When you are calm and composed in the face of pressure, and you do not feel the need to constantly speak, it shows that you are in control of the situation. Silence becomes an indication that you are confident enough in yourself and your position that you don't need to fill the space with unnecessary words. It communicates that you are not swayed by the chaos around you, and that you are capable of observing and responding thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Moreover, silence can also communicate a sense of mystery or intrigue. When we choose to remain silent, we leave others to wonder about our thoughts, intentions, and motivations. This can create a sense of allure, as people are often drawn to the unknown. Silence creates an air of mystery, prompting others to try to figure out what you are thinking or why you are withholding a response. This can lead them to place more value on your words when you do choose to speak, making your occasional remarks more significant and impactful. Silence in this sense becomes a tool to control the flow of communication, giving you an edge in situations where you want to remain enigmatic or influential. In social dynamics, silence also holds the power to shift the direction of a conversation. In group settings, for instance, when everyone is talking over each other, or when the conversation begins to spiral out of control, silence can act as a reset. It can serve as a moment of pause, allowing everyone to step back and reassess the conversation. By choosing not to speak, you give others the chance to reflect, which often leads to more thoughtful and meaningful exchanges. In this way, silence becomes a tool of mediation and influence, allowing the conversation to regain focus and purpose without you having to say a word. Even in professional settings, silence can communicate authority and decisiveness. When you are in a meeting or negotiation, and you choose not to speak immediately after an important point is made, it can signal that you are carefully considering the information presented. Your silence conveys that you are not rushing to make decisions or respond hastily, which often conveys wisdom and deliberation. It gives the impression that you are weighing your options carefully, and that you are in no hurry to offer a response until you are fully prepared. This strategic use of silence can give you the upper hand in negotiations, as it forces the other party to be more patient and consider your position more seriously. The beauty of silence lies in its ability to convey complex emotions and thoughts that words alone often cannot. It communicates without the need for articulation, relying instead on presence, context, and timing. Whether expressing empathy, setting boundaries, asserting authority, or creating mystery, silence is a language in its own right, one that can speak volumes with no need for verbal expression. The element of unpredictability, one of the most striking effects of silence, is its ability to introduce unpredictability into a situation. In any interaction, whether personal or professional, people rely on patterns, the expectation that others will respond in a certain way, behave according to a known script, or follow a predictable course of action. When you break this pattern by choosing silence, you introduce an element of uncertainty that can completely shift the dynamic of the interaction. This unpredictability can create a powerful advantage as it keeps others on their toes, unsure of how to proceed or what to expect next. In many ways, unpredictability gives you control over the situation. When people can't anticipate your reactions, they are forced to be more cautious, more thoughtful, and often more respectful in their approach. They cannot assume that they know how you will respond, which makes them more likely to pause and think carefully before taking any action. This hesitation is the result of their inability to predict your next move, and it places you in a position of power. By introducing unpredictability through silence, you disrupt their assumptions and force them to consider multiple possibilities, often slowing down the pace of the interaction and allowing you to gain a strategic advantage. Unpredictability also shifts the power dynamic in situations of conflict or negotiation. In these high-stakes environments, people are often trying to read each other's signals, to gauge the other party's next move in order to respond accordingly. Silence becomes a tool to disrupt this reading process. When you don't provide the expected cues, the other person is left in a state of uncertainty, unsure of your true intentions or how you will act. This uncertainty creates a sense of vulnerability in the other party, as they can no longer rely on past experiences or social cues to determine your response. As a result, they may guess their actions, hesitate in making a move, or even attempt to placate you in order to avoid miscalculating the situation. In personal relationships, unpredictability can be equally effective. When one person consistently responds in a certain way, their partner or counterpart comes to expect that behavior and may take it for granted. Silence, however, throws a wrench into this routine, forcing the other person to reevaluate their approach. They might wonder, why aren't they responding as they usually do? What's going on here? This shift in behavior can prompt them to reflect on their own actions and potentially adjust their approach. In this way, silence serves as a subtle yet powerful tool for keeping relationships dynamic and preventing them from becoming stagnant or predictable. It allows for the possibility of new outcomes, forcing the other person to reconsider their assumptions and approach the situation with fresh eyes. In a professional or social setting, unpredictability through silence can also convey authority and confidence. People who are used to a certain flow of communication or a predictable exchange may become uneasy when that flow is interrupted. Your silence makes it clear that you are not bound by the usual norms or expectations. It communicates that you do not feel the need to conform to the rhythm of the conversation, and that you are willing to operate outside of the expected parameters. This can make others take notice and treat you with more respect, as they recognize that you are not easily manipulated or coerced into following the crowd. Your silence signals that you are a force to be reckoned with, someone who does not need to speak in order to maintain control or influence. Unpredictability through silence can also challenge the comfort zones of others. People tend to prefer certainty and clarity, and they are often uncomfortable with ambiguity. When you choose silence, you create a sense of ambiguity, which can make others uneasy or unsure of how to engage with you. This discomfort can be leveraged in various ways. For example, in a professional negotiation, if one party remains silent after a proposal or counteroffer, it can force the other party to reassess their position. The silence introduces doubt into their mind. They might begin to question whether their offer was adequate, whether they misunderstood the situation, or whether they need to make a new offer. The longer the silence is held, the more likely they are to reconsider their position, potentially giving you an advantage. Similarly, in a social context, silence can be used to subtly challenge someone's behavior. When they are used to you always reacting, always providing feedback, or always responding in a certain way, your sudden lack of reaction may throw them off balance. They might feel the need to explain themselves more, or they may begin to question their own actions. This unpredictability can cause them to reassess their behavior or alter their approach, often leading to a shift in the power dynamic. In this way, silence acts as a tool of subtle influence, encouraging others to rethink their actions without you having to say a word. By creating unpredictability, silence also allows you to observe others more effectively. When people are uncertain of how you will respond, they may reveal more about themselves in their attempt to gauge your reaction. In this space of uncertainty, others may begin to act more cautiously, or they may overcompensate in an attempt to get a rise out of you. This gives you an opportunity to observe their true intentions and to better understand their motivations, something that can be invaluable in both personal and professional settings. You can use this knowledge to decide how to proceed, making decisions based on the clarity you gain from the other party's reactions to your silence. Unpredictability through silence ultimately gives you the ability to control the flow of interaction. By not conforming to expectations or providing immediate feedback, you place others in a position where they are forced to reconsider their approach. This creates an environment where you have the space to make calculated decisions, rather than being driven by the immediate pressures of the situation. Silence in this way becomes a tool for managing outcomes, influencing others, and maintaining a position of control even in the most unpredictable and dynamic situations.